On June 18, 1942, as the world burned in World War II, a boy named James Paul McCartney was born in Walton, Liverpool. England lived under the constant threat of German bombing raids. Air raid sirens, nightly blackouts, and rationing were part of daily life. In this climate of uncertainty, little Paul came into the world at Walton Hospital, in a port city marked by maritime trade and cultural diversity. Liverpool was no ordinary city. Goods, sailors, and, years later, records from the United States that would change the history of music entered through its port. But in 1942, survival was the urgent priority. Paul's father, Jim McCartney, worked in a cotton mill and had been an amateur musician. He played piano and trumpet in a jazz band during his youth. His mother, Mary, was a nurse and midwife, a hardworking and disciplined woman. Amid the austerity of war, the McCartney home had something special: music. Jim encouraged family gatherings around the piano. They weren't famous artists, but music was a constant presence. Paul grew up listening to traditional melodies, parlor songs, and jazz standards. Unbeknownst to him, those afternoons were planting a seed. With the war over in 1945, Great Britain entered a period of reconstruction. The country was economically exhausted, but full of hope. The government implemented significant social reforms, such as the creation of the National Health Service. However, shortages persisted, and life remained modest. Paul attended primary school in a working-class neighborhood. He was an intelligent, competitive, and somewhat mischievous boy. He excelled in his studies, especially in literature, and showed a talent for drawing and writing stories. A profound blow marked his childhood in 1956. The death of his mother from cancer. Paul was just 14 years old. The loss was devastating. Mary had been the emotional pillar of the family. That silent pain shaped his character. He learned to keep his emotions to himself and channel them into creativity. Years later, many of his compositions would possess a special sensitivity, a mixture of nostalgia and tenderness that seemed to spring from that early wound. During those years, another phenomenon was transforming the world of youth. Rock and roll, new, electric, and rebellious sounds were arriving from the United States. Elvis Presley, Little Richard, and Chuck Berry represented something different from the music of their parents. They were pure energy, an invitation to break with the established order. In a still conservative Great Britain, this rhythm was almost scandalous. Paul was fascinated. First, he tried to learn the trumpet, the instrument his father had given him, but he soon realized he couldn't sing while playing it. He switched to an acoustic guitar. He was left-handed, which complicated learning. He often had to adapt chords designed for right-handed players. However, his perseverance was greater than the difficulty. He practiced tirelessly in front of the mirror, memorizing lyrics and perfecting chords. In July 1957, an encounter occurred that would change his destiny. During a church festival in Walton, Paul met a young man named John Lennon, who was playing with his skiffle band, a musical style that blended folk, blues, and home-style rhythms. John had a magnetic presence, a defiant attitude, and a natural talent. Paul, barely 15 years old, was impressed but also saw an opportunity. After the concert, Paul picked up a guitar and demonstrated his ability to tune it properly, something John hadn't yet mastered, and play rock and roll songs with astonishing precision. That moment was pivotal. Days later, John invited him to join the band. Thus began a partnership that would transform popular music. The world at that time was experiencing growing tensions. The Cold War divided the planet into ideological blocs. Young people were beginning to question the old social structures. There was a desire for change for their own identity, and music was the perfect vehicle. Paul and John began writing songs together. They would meet at Paul's or John's house, exchanging ideas, revising verses, and engaging in friendly competition. It was a peculiar collaboration. Two distinct but complementary personalities. Paul brought discipline, a melodic sense, and a penchant for classical harmony. John brought rawness, irony, and an introspective sensibility. In the late 1950s, the band went through several name changes and lineup shifts. They played at parties, small clubs, and school events. They weren't professionals yet, but they were determined. Paul soon proved to be more than just a rhythm guitarist. His musical ear was exceptional. He quickly learned new songs and could reproduce them almost flawlessly after hearing them only once. In 1958, George Harrison, a younger but technically brilliant guitarist, joined the band. Paul initially hesitated because of his age, but recognized his talent. The trio began to solidify. They rehearsed for long hours, perfecting their American repertoire. Liverpool, thanks to its port, received imported records before other British cities. This cultural advantage would prove crucial. Meanwhile, British society was beginning to experience economic changes. The end of the decade brought greater access to consumer goods. Teenagers had more independence and their own money. A distinct youth culture was emerging, less bound by post-war values. By 1960, the group had adopted a new name and was looking for more serious opportunities. That year they traveled to Hamburg, Germany, to play in clubs in the St. Pauli district. The experience was tough, long nights, poor conditions, and demanding audiences, but it was also formative. There they played for hours each night, developing stamina, cohesion, and stage presence. Paul, still a teenager, learned to command the stage, connect with the audience, and hone his voice. Hamburg marked the end of his formative years and the beginning of something bigger. The young man, who had been born to the sound of war sirens, was now playing rock and roll in front of foreign crowds. He had survived the loss of his mother, discovered his passion, found creative partners, and absorbed influences from both sides of the Atlantic. The world was ready for a cultural revolution, though it didn't yet know it. The 1960s would bring profound changes: civil rights movements, social transformations, technological advances, and an unprecedented creative explosion. At the center of this whirlwind would be that boy from Liverpool who grew up amidst austerity, familiar piano melodies, and electric dreams. In 1960, Paul McCartney was only 18 years old. He wasn't yet a global star, but he already possessed the determination, talent, and experience that would soon make him a key figure in contemporary music. The story had only just begun. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with your family and friends.